Welcome to the PSAV Hive at MPI. I'm joined by Chang. And Chandy, as I look at your background, you are artist, urban planner, and designer. What have I missed? What have I missed?
No, you're good.
Is that it? And we're pleased to have you here today to talk about a number of subjects. And while it might seem on the surface that your area of expertise and passion is slightly different from what we're talking about at MPI, really not so. In fact, you were at MPI to talk about, I think, some of those parallels. So let me get started by saying, what do you mean when you say you want to make cities more emotional?
Well, I think that there are so many ways that the people around us can help improve our lives. And we don't bump into every neighbor, so a lot of wisdom never gets passed on, but we do share the same public spaces. And there's so much that we can share with one another to not only improve our communities, but to improve our personal well-being. People are full of stories about their place, hopes and fears, and these things usually live behind closed doors. You really don't know about it, and when people leave, these stories leave with them. And it just made me wonder, how can we make more contemplative sharing in a community, and how can we make it easier for people to really understand one another in different ways?
And what do you get when that happens? A stronger economic community, just stronger bonds in a community?
Stronger bonds in, I think, many different ways. And at first, my questions really started out quite practical about ways that I could come together with my neighbors and share more information that was related to the neighborhood, or share more resources. And then only later on, I think my own priorities kind of changed, and I realized that we're not just neighbors in a place with shared interests in that place, but we're also neighbors in trying to make sense of our lives. And there's really great comfort in knowing that you're not alone. That you're not alone as you're trying to figure things out, as you're trying to make sense of things. And there's so much that the people around us, we're all going through different challenges in our life. And how can we make it easier for people to really understand that and understand one another? But I think when I've been to a lot of community meetings, residents come together, they often have a limited understanding of one another. Same thing with like conferences or other kinds of meetings too, and employees come together. And I think this can often lead to impersonal relationships or even adversarial relationships, because it's easy to dehumanize somebody else if you just don't know that much, if the only thing that you know about each other is one particular issue. And I thought it was really interesting to see how some projects like the Before I Die Wall or the Confessions Project really tried to knock some of those barriers down. I think that we have a lot of barriers to opening up with strangers, but there's a lot that we can learn from one another if we can.
What do you think you tapped into? What human emotion do you think you tapped into with that? Because it's obviously people had this, they wanted to express themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of emotions. And I think that for a lot of us, it's, we have more and more everything all of the time. I think we have more and more distractions all the time. And I think it's easy to forget that life is brief and tender, and it's easy to forget the things that really make your life meaningful to you. So I think that's part of it. And it's also part of it has to do with just being able to express yourself in public space. It's a really rare thing you can do still, just to be able to share your thoughts with the people around you. It's still not easy to do. And so I think that's what, that might have been something that was touching to people too. And these walls, they're full of lots of emotions. They're full of hope and joy and longing and fear and anxiety and wonder, and all these things that you find in every community that often gets hidden, right? Or we often never see that side of the people that we pass by on the street. And I think that everybody that you walk by, and everybody that you're sitting next to in a cafe, and everybody that you're standing with in line, we're all going through different challenges in our life. But it's easy to forget this because we often, we never really go beyond the small talk with strangers. We have a lot of barriers to opening up. And it makes me wonder, how can we create more safe places to share? I think there's a lot of power there, and a lot of ways to ease in to deeper conversations.
You mentioned a safe place because there was still a certain degree of anonymity. I could open my heart and say what was in my heart, but I didn't have to proclaim it. I could write it. by myself, perhaps at night when nobody was watching or whenever. Is that part of it as well? I mean, the need to express ourselves, but the desire to do it in a safe place?
I think that a safe place is important, a place where you can be honest and
And vulnerable to some
and
degree.
vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some of these projects have allowed people then to get into deeper conversations. I've created some before I die walls with students in different universities,
Right.
and one of the most common responses I've seen is, before I die, I want to overcome depression.
Wow.
And
These are young kids.
yeah, these are high school students or college students. And it always touches me so much because I went through that kind of experience myself. I went through a period of grief and depression. And I think a lot of times we're often scared to talk about it. We don't talk about these things. But I think even seeing it on that wall, even though it was anonymous, it started that conversation. You know, it sparked a dialogue that many people have had then in front of the wall, including myself, with other people
Right.
about what this means.
So how did you share, you were a speaker at the event, and what thoughts did you share about this with the group today? How does it translate to their meetings and to MPI?
Well, I think that, you know, conferences and meetings are communities too. I was saying that room is like the size of my neighborhood.
The entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think they're fundamentally made of the same things. They're fundamentally made of people and a shared interest. And I think that it's great to think about ways to connect people. You know, I think it's great. Face-to-face meetings will always exist, and there are certain benefits to that. And how can we create complementary tools around that that'll help people get involved in different ways on their own time and help people make more meaningful connections with each other. You know, I think there are benefits, there are pluses and minuses to all kinds of tools, from online tools to tools in public space. And I think that's what's been interesting to see when I've made projects in public space versus projects that are online. You know, they both have benefits, ways that make it more accessible to people, but also ways that you can bring people together at different points or archive conversations and resources and information and ways for people to meet up later on.
It's interesting because I know a lot of what MPI does has to do with community involvement when they move into a town for a meeting, and I know that at the chapter levels they encourage involvement. And is that similar to what we're talking about, this kind of involvement? I mean,
I think there's different kinds of
Right.
involvement and different ways that you can get involved. You know, I think that for many of us, there are certain issues that we care about, and there are certain issues that we care very, very much about.
Right.
And how do you create different kinds of tools to allow people to get involved in different levels of that, in different kinds of depth, you know.
and if you're successful, what will have happened at any one of these locations? You'll get the grocery store, or you'll get...
Yeah, well, hopefully, well, one of the goals might be that, right? If people all want a grocery store to happen, that one might happen. And I think another thing that might come out of it is that people just simply make meaningful connections with their other neighbors.
Engaged, they feel...
Yeah, sometimes it's still, you know, hard to break the ice with strangers, and to have some sort of shared goal is a first big step, and just to know that you both care about the same thing.
Two real last easy questions. When you talk to meeting planners at any organization, are there principles in what you do that they can apply, best practices, learning from what you've been through, they can apply in meetings?
I think that it's good to think about different ways that people can come together, different tools for people to be able to come together with the things that they care about, really specific ways that they can come together, because everybody's busy, you know, everyone's really busy, and not everyone can meet for everything. So how do you make it easy for people to start these different levels of conversations with one another, and use different tools so people can ease into discussions as well. You know, these things start out anonymously,
Right.
but they can actually become very personal then, once people have a conversation in front of these projects, in front of these walls.
some of these are painfully honest expressions.
Yeah,
And
very much so.
now, the tough question, you've been asked this a lot, so Candy Chang, before I die, what? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, there are so many things, and you know, it continues to change as I grow and change, as it does for everybody. But right now, before I die, I want to hole up and read books for weeks. I have giant stacks of books on my table, all these things I want to read: philosophy, psychology, cities. Just need to find that good chunk of time, you know.
I couldn't think of anything more practical. I could think of something more noble, but nothing more practical. Candy, thank you so much for
Thank
spending
you.
time with us.
Thank
We've been
you.
speaking with Candy Chang, urban designer, artist, urban planner, and appreciate the thoughts of Candy, especially as regards how to build community. You've been watching the PSAV Hive at MPI, and we hope you'll come back and watch a later segment.